The Browns Blitz is brought to you by BigPlay.com. Now here are your hosts, Rod Bloom and Sam Maddie.
And welcome to another episode of the Browns Blitz. Today is Wednesday, July 24th, and this is episode 16. And we are coming up on Browns training camp. Actually, by the time you hear this, it's probably going to be happening. So we're very excited about the show tonight. We have a special guest. And before we get to our special guest, I want to bring in my partner, Sam Maddie. How's your day going, Sam?
Busy as ever, but I'm here.
Yeah. Well, I can understand and commiserate with you on that. So, not going to waste any time. We have the one and only Jake Burns with us tonight. We couldn't think of anybody better to talk some Browns football with as training camp's beginning. So, thanks for joining us, Jake. And how's things going in the Burns household right now?
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm honored to come on. Things are great. It's a busy time of year, getting ready to head up to Cleveland for about a 5-day stretch there. I'll be staying in Akron, around the area. So just, wrangling a toddler and getting ready to take my first long trip away from them. So a lot of that stuff mentally going on. But other than that, excited for what should be a fun Browns training camp leading into the preseason and season.
It kind of seems like we've been waiting forever for these days. So yeah, I think we're all kind of just so excited about this. Can't wait to kind of kick this talk off and kind of see what's on your mind right now. But before we do that, we do a little segment called Blitz Beverages, and we're going to talk just a little bit about what we're drinking during the show. Jake, you can join us if you want to. I am drinking a beer that actually my sister-in-law Diane brought back for me from Massachusetts. It's from the Berkshire. Sam, you can pick whichever way you want me to say that. I don't know how you say it in Massachusetts. So Berkshire Brewing Company, and it's a Drayman's Porter. It's got a very nice flavor to it, pretty malty. I've just barely started it, so very much appreciate her bringing that back for me. Just nice to have something that you probably can't find around the Dayton, Ohio area. So I'll definitely maybe give you another word on that a little later in the show. But Sam, what are you working on tonight?
I'm drinking absolutely nothing.
Well, that's great for the segment. That's just great.
No water. I've been pounding water all day. That's normally all I drink, but no, I'm not drinking anything right now. So,
how about you, Jake?
I've been drinking a gratuitous amount of Propel. That's all I've been drinking lately. I don't know why. I'm just into the kiwi strawberry Propels, and not much of an alcohol guy, so I'm probably not great for the beer segment, but I'm drinking a lot of Propels if those are something that interests anybody out there.
Propel. I remember when Propel first came out, and I was just so stoked about it, and I always used to drink the grape kind. I just thought it was just the best stuff in the world.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I mean, it made me a better athlete. It definitely did.
There's no doubt about it. It's scientifically proven, guys.
The Browns need to make sure the Propel is on the sidelines.
Yeah, drop that memo to J.W. Johnson here soon. He'll get that taken care of.
There you go.
That's great. Thanks for joining me in that segment, guys. I kind of feel like a little out of place now, but hey, let's get into some Browns talk.
You're obviously the alcoholic of the group.
Well, for anybody that's seen a picture of my fridge, they know why I need to have a beer occasionally to try to empty that thing out. So that would be the reasoning. I'm far from an alcoholic, but I do need to kind of work on some of that inventory a little bit. So. So we're just going to kind of handle this interview style, and we have some questions for Jake. Kind of wanted to get into some things, but Before we even do that, Jake, why don't you give us your information? What's going on with you professionally, and where everybody can reach you before we get too far into this?
Yeah, I'm writing a ton of stuff over at Cleveland.com. That's sort of where I'm making my home for the little bit of time here, maybe for the foreseeable future. We'll see how things shake out. There's always behind the scenes stuff that goes on, but that's where I'm writing a ton of stuff. So if you're interested in reading what I'm doing, it's at Cleveland.com, and then kind of froze up Browns Film Breakdown. That's not really doing a ton of stuff right now. It'll probably kick up in the regular season. That's at Browns Film BDN. And then my personal Twitter account is at Jake_Burns18. And then occasionally, not as often right now, I will have stuff on the Orange and Brown Report too. So a little bit of everywhere, but mostly Cleveland.com right now.
Excellent.
Jake, is your son ready to fulfill the shoes that you are laying out for him? I mean, he is a spitting image of you.
Well, the poor guy does look like me. I don't know if he'll be into football. I mean, his Baker Mayfield jersey fits right now. He'll be surrounded by football and basketball and baseball his whole life, but you just never know what direction they'll go. I'm hoping he does that stuff because that's the stuff I can help him with the most. If he wants to play the violin, I'm passing him off. But if he wants to play sports, I hope he does. That'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, he looks a lot like me. He's starting to look more like his mom. But yeah, I hope. I genuinely hope he likes some of the stuff I like. That helps, right? Because that helps you bond and all that good stuff.
But is he following in your footsteps as far as has he had his first shave yet?
No, we're trying to get him to say some more words. Like, damn it, come on, start talking a little bit more, man. No, he's at the craziest age right now where he's running everywhere. Just he's past the initial I can walk phase, and he's on to this point where I can walk really fast and I can go wherever I want. I can do whatever I want, and I can get into these things I'm not supposed to get into. I don't care about all these toys. I can get into the sink. I can get under the sink. I can do this. He's everywhere. So this is like the toughest, most tiring stage of parenting. And at least we're in the trenches over here in the Burns household. We're trying to make it through and stay positive.
He's definitely a good-looking kid, and I tell you, Jake, I'm going to be honest with you. The only reason I follow you on Twitter is just to see your son. So I don't really give a shit about what you're doing in your film breakdown. It's just all about your son. So he's a good,
I respect that. I respect that. His mom will be happy to hear that.
He's a good-looking kid, and he's funny. And some of the things that you post about him on the daily or every couple of days are just really funny. And I'm going. I saw your vacation pics. It looks like you all had a good time.
Yeah. We went to Wilmington. Great time.
Cool. Good deal. All right, well, let's dive into some Browns, and I'm just going to start it off. My first question is, what do you think is going to happen with this cornerback competition between Terrence Mitchell and Greedy Williams?
I've heard this come up lately. To me, it is, barring Greedy Williams just sort of, for lack of a better term, crapping the bed, he's the number 2 corner. And I think that it happened quickly. It happened in the second day of OTAs that we were media availability. I was relatively shocked how quickly he was running with the ones, but it's almost like they were treating Greedy like a first-round pick. And, some people thought Greedy was, by sheer talent alone, a lock to be a first-round pick. It was pretty surprising when he got to the Browns there in the middle of the second round. I remember I was in the movie theater actually watching. I think Endgame had come out at that time, and just kept peeking at my watch to try to see who they picked. And I was like, how the heck did Greedy get to 17 in the second round? But yeah, I think they've treated him like that, whether that's treating him like that to boost his confidence. When I was there for OTAs, which were about a couple of weeks later, he was making plays, and he was making plays in the pass game. He got beat a couple of times, as rookies will, but all of the traits that we saw at LSU were there and effective, and he had an interception, pick 6, and I just left thinking that's the Browns starting corner opposite of Denzel Ward. And if I guess, things could change. He could have a really tough training camp when pads get on. He's not tackling like he needs to be, or at least being, readily available. He could have bad tackling performances in the preseason. Anything could happen. But as of right now, I think Greedy is the clear-cut number 2 corner opposite of Ward. And that doesn't mean that Terrence Mitchell won't have a role. Right. They can put him on the field in dime situations, and they're gonna. I don't really think it's a secret that Denzel and Greedy aren't the biggest broad-shouldered types of guys. They're not, they're not Patrick Peterson builds. They're thin guys who could occasionally run into injury. So Terrence Mitchell is absolutely vital as the third cornerback, and I hope he's bought into that role as sort of that number 3 outside corner. Like inside at the nickel position is sort of locked down by TJ Carey, where he's really comfortable, and then Eric Murray I think will play a lot there too. But yeah, I think Mitchell is the number 3 right now pretty clearly, and like I said, unless we're watching practice the next week and things change maybe in the orange and brown scrimmage they have there on the 3rd, it's just, to me, it is pretty clear cut that Greedy is the second corner.
As far as him being a rookie, obviously being drafted just this last off season, what kind of is he meshing well with the other players? Are they, does he have some respect from the locker room already? What's his presence already?
Well, he's a part of things by sheer nature of where he comes from, an LSU guy, and he's coming into a locker room with 2 LSU superstars, really, in terms of personality. So they welcome him right away with open arms. He's very communicative with everybody. Seems like him and Sione Takitaki have formed a little bit of a relationship. To us early, these guys don't know each other well yet, but they spend 4 months together in the season. They'll get to know each other real well. But it's not like I've noticed Greedy on his own, scared, petrified, away from everybody, sort of as an outcast. Now he's out and social, and if you've seen interviews with him, he's a funny character, so I'm sure he gets along with everybody, and it'll be interesting to see how those matchups go with his 2 LSU counterparts there and one-on-ones and stuff like that. That's where I'm really fascinated.
Do you think he is, how does he pair with Denzel? You watched him at OTA, so are they pretty much the same type of player, or do they, what differentiates the two?
Ward and Greedy, is that who you're asking about there?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I think Denzel's just a very complete football player, and technically sound, very, very savvy, very aware. I think Greedy can get there. I think they can be much of the same, which is they're better man-to-man corners. Easier to teach zone techniques and zone awareness than it is to teach how to truly play man-to-man and the sort of intricate skills that you either have or you don't have to play man-to-man. Both of them use mirror techniques really well, can walk down in your face and really just sort of mirror with quick feet the route that are being run, not necessarily jamming, getting your hands on, but guys who can just sort of shade and mirror and turn and run with you at any speed. Those guys do really, really similar things, and I think that they'll be a lot alike. They also both come with tackling critiques. Obviously, Denzel dealt with 2 concussions on separate occasions. Greedy is Dave Aranda, his LSU defensive coordinator, made note of, is not one of his strong points is tackling. Now, this could be, you're ranking the skills of a corner. I don't think tackling is in the top 4, but it does need to be done. You do need to find a way to bite ankles and get, take guys' legs out and bring people down, because those are when 10-yard plays turn into 50-yard plays. So there is some of that. He's going to have to improve. He's been very vocal about improving in that area, and I think it'll be a heavy emphasis of his. And I'm just hoping that with his size, which I do concern a little bit about the slight shoulders and build, like how it all looks for him, how can he take a big hit from a running back and be able to keep it on? Like, those things I need to see. And once I see those things, once I see him tackling in live speed, I think he'll be the real deal to an extent. It's not a guarantee with any corner. We're taking first, 6th, 7th, 8th, whatever. I just made up an 8th round, by the way. But it is something you just never know. It's a really hard position. You don't necessarily always know the mental psyche of guys. Can they handle getting beat for 70 yards? Come back the next play and break up a 10-yard out or whatever? Can they do those things? Can they forget? Can they move on? I mean, other than quarterback, cornerback, separating the two are the 2 positions, both offensively and defensively, where you have to have the short-term memory and move on as quick as you can. If one of your mistakes are highlighted every play, you can make a mistake as a defensive tackle, offensive guard, offensive tackle, whatever. And most of the people won't see it in real time to an extent. They'll see a sack, something like that, but there will be times where a tackle or guard gets beat and the ball gets thrown before the guy gets there. No one notices it. But if you make a mistake as a corner and a play is made your way, it is going to be a glaring situation where you can't hide from that mistake. So it's like, I think Greedy has, I've said this from the beginning, Greedy has all the tools in the tool belt. He's very effective man-to-man cover guy, but he's savvy enough and aware enough to understand zone principles and baiting quarterbacks into making throws. It's just a matter of how does the mental makeup look and how does he handle the physicality of the next level.
Good deal.
Yeah, Jake, a lot of people, especially nationally, are focused on the changes the Browns made with adding OBJ and Olivier Vernon and Kareem Hunt, but there's been a lot of other changes on this roster. When we get down to a 53-man roster, how much better do you expect the depth to be, and how do you expect that to show up like on special teams and maybe some other places?
Yeah, good question. I think this has been or will be one of the biggest differences is you go into camp this year with probably 5 or 6 roster positions that you don't really know about. There might be 10 guys for 6 roster spots. That's different. It's very different. It felt like in previous years there were probably 25 roster spots that could go any one direction, which sounds like a lot, but it's sort of true. And it's like this is a tame situation. Browns fans have grown accustomed to sort of arguing over these things within each other and looking at there's no issue with who the running back, the starting running back is or the order of operations there. The quarterback settled, the backup quarterback, the offensive line is 4 out of 5 positions are settled. The tight ends are settled pretty much. They're going to keep a third one. It's very likely to be set. But it's like maybe there are 3 positions on offense, and then you're worrying about the wide receiver 5 and 6. But you're going into, for example, Rod, you're going into camp looking at keeping 6 wide receivers. You know who your top 4 guys are. They're all going to be big time contributors. Right. The 5th or 6th wide receivers, it's probably between Ish Hyman and then Derek Willis, and you're looking at Damian Ratley is probably the top 3 contending. Blake Jackson's out there competing. Damon Sheehy Giuseppe's out there competing. Jalen Strong. There are long shots who could creep in, but those 3 to me, it's of those 3, which 2 can play special teams? And I think they all 3 can. They're all great runners. They can beat somebody down the field on kickoff, punt team, those things as a gunner. At cornerback, Tavere Thomas is another guy, and I think Philip Gaines is another. They have guys. The beautiful part of the roster structure is they have a lot of depth at safety. Those guys are very adaptable players on special teams. Eric Murray was a special teams ace in Kansas City before he took over a bigger role. So even if he doesn't have a bigger role here, he would be a big part of the special teams. And Mike Prefer has made note of Eric Murray's special teams capability, one of the best in the league the 2 years before last year when he really started playing a ton of safety snaps for Kansas City. But then the 2 young linebackers they drafted, Mack Wilson was an absolute stud on Alabama special teams. He will be expected to do that here. Sione Takitaki can flat run for his size. Those are guys, linebacker, safety, wide receivers, extra tight ends, the Pharaoh Browns who are fighting for a job, and the Orson Charles who are fighting for a job. Those are your guys, and you should feel good about that. I just don't think that you're going to see – I wouldn't imagine that many competitive rosters, teams that are competing to go to the playoffs, win divisions, are having special teams units in the bottom 10 of the league, unless they're kicking unit situations terrible, because they have complete rosters with young guys fighting for jobs with skill at the back half of the roster who are looking to sort of take their game to the next level, and they're proving it through special teams. So the Browns are trying to find a couple with those air quotes special teams aces, is that Dontrell Hilliard? They're going to try to figure out who those guys are. Damon, I mentioned earlier, Sheehy Giuseppe is going to try to be a return guy. They're going to try to find those special teams aces, because it's most good teams have those people. The Steelers have Ryan Switzer, and there's just some of these teams have those special teams players that are really good. The Browns are probably going to be pretty picky about finding a couple of those guys that they think can be around here for a while. Darius Taylor was a special teams captain in Tampa Bay last year, who they brought in to sort of compete at the Sam linebacker spot, but he's going to be a very important part of special teams. So I answered your question long form, but moral of the story is they have depth now that makes logical sense, and I think that means that you're going to have young guys fighting with skill, they brought in who can compete in the way they get on this rosters through special teams, and that creating a culture of competition in special teams, not eye roll, I'm rolling my eyes, I got to be on the kickoff team. No, I want to be on the kickoff team because that's how I make this roster. So that's a different sort of lookout.
Right. You said that the backup quarterback settled. Or you expect Drew Stanton to be the backup?
I mean, as far as I know, I guess if Garrett Gilbert lights it up in the preseason, there's a world in which Stanton is sort of like an inactive or whatever. I don't know what they would do.
Do you think they'll carry two quarterbacks like they did last season?
Yeah, I don't see them carrying three. I just think that's a wasted roster spot. And if you ran into some sort of weird situation where somehow Baker got hurt and somehow Garrett or Drew Stanton got hurt, I mean, you have two guys in Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham who can throw it. I mean, they're going to hand the ball off 25 times, but they could throw it. I mean, it's like they could throw a fade route. You know what I mean? Like they could do some things. So pretty much everybody in the NFL is carrying two quarterbacks these days. I'd expect the Browns to do the same. I think the backup competition is an open competition, and I think those two will compete and see a lot of time. I think Browns fans need to prepare for seeing Baker Mayfield for like one or two series in the preseason, and that's it. And it'll be a lot of Garrett Gilbert and a ton of Garrett Gilbert. They'll start out with Stanton, but they'll give Garrett Gilbert an entire second half. And if he really proves to be effective, they will they'll consider making him the second guy because he's young. You can keep growing in this offense. He's young enough. He can keep growing in this offense, and he's very connected to Baker through Lake Travis and all of that stuff too.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sam.
Jake, you had brought up Mack Wilson. Me being from the South, living in Kentucky, there's a lot of bandwagon Alabama fans, and I say that exactly how it is, bandwagon Alabama fans. I really like Mack Wilson. I watched a lot of film on him. I think he's really, really good player, underrated, and I'm surprised that he did go as late as he did at 5 or in the 5th round. Do you had mentioned him, trying to hit the roster and being on the special teams. Do you think that we could see Mack Wilson in our linebacking core rotation at all this year?
Well, I don't think they're going to rotate those guys. So, like, if Kirksey and Schobert are healthy, they're playing every rep. They're playing almost every single rep unless something kind of happens and they just get winded. Like, defensive linemen will rotate, but, like, corners, linebackers, safeties, unless it's a situational thing where they need to bring a third linebacker on the field, like, I think the Browns are going to be a 4-2-5 base pretty much all the time, so they're going to play two linebackers. If they do bring a third one on in short yardage situations, that role is open. If Sione Takitaki can win it or Mack Wilson can win, they'll all be in the mix. It's probably Ardarius Taylor's job to lose, but he'll be in the mix. I certainly think Mack Wilson is good enough to eventually be an NFL starter. Does he ever become a standout? Probably not. I don't think he processes things as quickly as needed to, and I'm not sure that he handles or takes blocks and defeats blocks in the run game well enough, but he has a nose for the football in the passing game. He's a good enough athlete. And as far as like a guy in the 5th round from a winning culture, all of those things, who maybe has the light bulb brighten a little bit in the NFL where it just sort of clicks and he's able to understand schemes and what's happening a little bit faster, that pick makes a lot of sense to me. But I don't think anybody should be expecting Mack Wilson to come in and be a really dominant player during his career. If that happens, that's great. But the film and the data as far as who he is as an athlete don't tell us that. That doesn't mean that there aren't outliers. But I think he could just be – I think when they looked at Mack and Takitaki, they were looking at guys who they think can be good enough linebackers at the NFL level, and I think both of those guys can. Takitaki's a better athlete, plays at a faster speed. That's why I have a little bit higher hope for Sione than I do for Mack Wilson. But they took those guys, I think, especially Sione, with the thought that they're going to play at some point. And if Joe Schobert continues to tackle poorly and is ineffective in the run game, they're gonna eventually have to figure out something. If that's 8 weeks of that stuff or something along those lines as a sample size, they're gonna try to figure something out. And if Christian Kirksey has had 2 bad years in a row where he's just been ineffective and absolutely terrible in the run game, if he can't figure it out, they're gonna have to plug those other guys in, give somebody else a chance. So those 2 veterans are the clear front runners. But this is a new scheme. This is a new defensive coordinator. I think the scheme is more linebacker friendly than what Greg Williams was running. But that doesn't always mean that a guy will perform better in a different scheme. So new coordinator, new linebackers coach, so there's a lot to be determined. But I do think it's pretty clearly going to be the 2 veterans from the start.
Right. Hey, guys, real quick, we got a breaking alert right here. There's a no-hitter watch. Indians pitcher Shane Bieber has not allowed a hit through 6 versus the Blue Jays. So I just wanted to throw that in there right now.
Nice.
Since we're still on the, I'm gonna jump in front of you just real quick since we're on special teams, if that's okay.
Sure.
Jake, do you think that we see a new kicker? Does Greg Joseph, does he leave the team? Does Austin Seibert take the job? And then will Britton Colquitt still be on the team, or will the Scottish Hammer take over?
I would say Britton Colquitt is safe for another year. I think they're going to really keep in contact with I think it's Jamie Gillen, right? I think they're going to really keep in contact with him because he can kick it. I mean, he's got a live leg, but he's a little inconsistent still, and they need that person to be able to hold on the PAT team. I think they're going to work with him. He's probably going to get cut, but I think they're going to really keep in close contact with him and try to develop him and try to use him in the future as far as taking over for Colquitt. But I think they need in a team that you think is competing. They think they're Super Bowl contenders. I do too. You need an experienced punter who can handle the holding for place kicks and have comfort in doing that and being able to punt the ball well enough. And Colquitt was a good punter. He's a top half of the league punter. I think he was tied for 4th in the league in punts down inside the 20-yard line. Like, he's good. He's fine. I think he'll be here. The kicking situation is truly 50-50. When I was there, I thought Greg Joseph was kicking field goals a little bit better. I think Seibert has a better leg in terms of just sort of the sound off of the foot and the distance that we see. But he was not as accurate as Greg Joseph. But that doesn't mean anything. They could change. This stuff is all very fickle. So it's open. It's an open competition. Every kick is going to be charted in camp. Every kick in preseason is going to be as monumental a kick as those guys have ever had in their career because it's their job on the line. I think you would go 51-49 for Seibert because they spent a 5th-round pick on him and they really want somebody accurate inside 40 yards. Yep. And I think Greg Joseph can win that job, and I've been vocal about it, but he has to kick his rear end off. He has to kick really well and really accurately and evoke confidence because he made 17 of 20 field goals, but they were not confidence-based field goals. They didn't feel great about that, and he missed 4 PATs. I think he was something like 17 for 21. I mean, I could be off on that, but I know he missed 4, and it was the worst overall percentage of conversion of extra points in the NFL. So they need better kicking. I think that people looked at Seibert's resume, and he wasn't very good outside 50 yards. Well, they don't plan to kick many outside 50 yards. They want somebody who's accurate from 49 in, and I think he was relatively good enough for that in the college level. So, like I said, 51-49 Seibert right now, but if one guy outkicks the other, it's their job.
Jake, I think Rod and I can definitely agree with you. There was not one time during the year where I was confident kicking field goals. So we definitely know what you're talking about there.
It's been that way since Phil Dawson left. I mean, it's
much,
overlooked, but the extra points are, if you're watching the All or Nothing, which is the great Amazon, the documentary series, they do a full-on season. I couldn't suggest people why. If you want to know how the NFL works and what it looks like from the inside, it's so great. They've done it 4 seasons now. The Panthers were the most recent one. It just released. You have to have Amazon Prime, but Graham Gano kicks a 63-yarder to win the game week 2 against the Giants, and it's like unbelievable kick. They're down 1. It was a pressure pass. It wasn't a tie game. You had to kick it to win it, and he makes it from 63. Then the next week he misses 2 PATs. Like, it's hard to be a kicker now. It used to be you had those practice kicks, those PATs from short 21-yard practice kicks or whatever, 19 yards. They're not that way anymore. They're enough to make you nervous, and if you miss enough of those, it's going to rattle your confidence, and it carries over. Even the best guys in this thing, as I rank the Browns special teams, like Justin Tucker from the Ravens is sort of the gold standard as the leading all-time percentage guy, but nothing's guaranteed anymore with kickers, and there's more pressure than ever.
All right.
I wanted to bring up real quick another guy who's listed as a linebacker, even though it doesn't really play a lot of that, is Jannard Avery. What do you think his role is going to be this year? Is he a guy that's kind of going to get squeezed because of some of these other guys? I kind of felt like after last season he was a guy whose role would expand a little bit, but looking at this roster, I almost feel like he's going to be that situational pass rusher again.
Yeah, he has not worked with the linebackers at all. He is a rotational defensive end that they will put in certain situations that are advantageous for his skill to turn and bend the corner. So they will bump a guy inside, whether that's Miles or Olivier, who are both really good rushers over a guard as interior players. They'll bump them inside and let Gennard turned the corner. So yeah, he's a full-time defensive end. I think he's a roster lock because he's so good at it, and they will use him about 20 snaps a game. So yeah, take him out of your linebacker consideration. I know a lot of people have thought that way, yeah, he's a full-time DN, and I think he'll be a big part of what they do here.
Yeah, I really expected him, before the Vernon trade to be maybe not the full-time starter at defensive end, but to get a lot of time at defensive end this season. So anyways, I wanted to just talk briefly about running back. I don't want to go into all the Duke Johnson stuff, but the whole deal with him wanting to be traded and all that. I don't know if we really know how he's going to fit in on this team. And I think some people, myself included, feel like if there's a major injury on another team, that he could be dealt sometime before the beginning of the season. How would you feel, Jake, if Duke were to be traded before the beginning of the season and the Browns started with Nick Chubb, Dontrell Hilliard, and Dearness Johnson as their three running backs?
Yeah, I think they can do whatever they want with Duke. They can keep him and try to make him a part of what they're doing here, or if they move him, I don't have a problem with it either. They just got to get to week 8, and they can do that by keeping him for 4 or 5 weeks, or waiting until injuries happen, whatever. I don't think there's a wrong way they can go with this, guys, is my point. Unless he just becomes such a locker room cancer that it's not feasible to keep him. But I'm a big believer in Dontrell Hilliard. I don't think that by any stretch of the imagination a lack of opportunity means a guy doesn't have the skills, and I think he has the skills to be an effective enough backup running back. Had 9 catches in the passing game last year. He runs well. So to me, it's like I think they'd be fine, and they would be able to sort of hover around until Kareem Hunt is available to be a rotational player. So I'm just to the point where I couldn't conceivably care less about the Duke Johnson situation. They should do what's best for the franchise. If they want to keep him and make him a part of their offense, go ahead. If they don't want to keep him because they can't stand the attitude or his sense of wanting to be out of the building, make a deal. At this point, even if they cut him, I wouldn't care. He's not going to swing the pendulum from winning or losing. Telling you, they're going to play Chubb a ton. If they want to switch up and go with a guy in the backfield who's predominantly going to give away run pass, put Hilliard on the field. He's fine enough to do it. He can do everything they've asked Duke Johnson to do. And this is not a knock on Duke. I think Duke's a fine player. I have no qualms with him at all. I'm just saying what he's doing is not swinging a football game to win or loss, and it is not going to affect things in an all too drastic fashion.
Right.
Jake, what are your predictions for Baker? This, everybody wants to talk about his sophomore slump. What do you think? What Baker Mayfield do we see this season?
There's no reason to think. The recent trend data is that year 2 quarterbacks, if they have the skill set necessary, I would include Baker and the guys who have come out in the last 3-4 years who have the skill set necessary, have really taken off in year 2. I will say quarterback progress is not always linear. Just because you had a great year 1 doesn't mean you're going to have a great year 2. But in terms of guys who have taken off going year 1 to year 2, Wentz, Watson, even Mitchell Trubisky, you're looking at guys who take, Jared Goff took the Rams after a troubling rookie year. They had a year 2 jump as a team, and him as a quarterback went to the playoffs. Wentz, year 1 to year 2, would have been the MVP. And I've wrote about this. It's going to come out on Complex website here soon. But it's like the data is there for this stuff to happen. And if you're not thinking it could happen for Mayfield, you're kind of ignoring some pretty large and tangible data here. But like I said, Goff, Wentz, year 1 to year 2, big breakout year 2, would have been the MVP had not he torn his ACL week, I think, 14. They win the Super Bowl. Deshaun Watson takes the year 1 to year 2, the Texans to 11-5. They're a playoff team. And then Patrick Mahomes takes year 1 of barely playing to year 2, and they're obviously the best team in the AFC through the regular season. It's there. It's all there for Mayfield. You got to look at the coaching situation is going to be immensely better. The quarterbacks going into year 2, the weapons around him have changed drastically, and to the point that they're probably one of the best 3 teams in the league in terms of skill position weapons. And the entire team is better. The formula is there for a better defense. All of the things that you would need to say, hey, this quarterback is going to probably throw for about 4,500 yards and 38 to 40 touchdowns, it's all there. And at Mayfield, so that's what expecting is to make an immense jump. I predicted him about 35 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Could exceed that, obviously. About 4,500 yards and a 65-ish completion percentage should be what we're looking for. Plenty of big plays.
Yeah.
Those would both be Browns season records, by the way. 35.
Yeah, I think those are all going to fall. I think that needs to be written at some point. But all of those, all of the quarterback, Brian Stipe, I believe, has a good number of those. I think they're all going to fall. And, it's a different league.
I think it's 30 touchdowns, and I think the yardage is like 4,400 and change, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
sounds right to me.
So. All right, Jake, I've got two things real quick here. Just I'm going to give you two things. I just want you to say which one's more likely for the Browns. The pass opens up the run this season, or the pass can't be stopped.
I think it's probably going to be a pass sets up the run because they're going to do a lot of 11 personnel, and I think that will empty out boxes because of the threats in terms of teams needing to cover all of those threats, and they can even be in 10 personnel with 4 receivers. It's just going to lighten the boxes, so you're not going to have as many stacked boxes that Nick Chubb will have to deal with. So I think that they will throw, and it will eventually set up the pass, set up the run, which is they jump out to some leads and then they sort of wear you down. They wear you down and really kind of end the game on the ground with Nick Chubb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I would agree with you there. The other one is about the passing game. The first one is OBJ or Baker to OBJ is the top
tandem.
Tandem in the league, or OBJ opens things up and we see passing yardage spread throughout the top 4 receivers on the Browns.
Well, I think history would tell you with Mayfield his 1 year that he is he's a throw it to who's open guy, and there's reason to believe that the throw it to who's open method will work for spreading it around, but I will just say that Odell Beckham is always open. He's always open. So I think they're going to try to get him the ball a lot by design. So I think that doesn't necessarily mean the ball will go to him if they design a play that is supposed to go to him, because teams can take away that first option, but there will be a lot of route concepts where he is the primary option, and that will probably lead to him. I think, and Evan Silva mentioned this on my podcast the other day, that it's a good bet to look at Odell for leading the league in wide receiving yards, and I think it is, just because he's never played with a quarterback like Mayfield, and I think that will matter, and I think it will drastically improve how we envision him, as I think he is the most talented receiver in the NFL. He has a chance to prove that talent now, and that's going to be fascinating.
So what numbers do you expect him to put up?
I think that the goal for him should be about 115 catches, something along those lines, 110, 115, 1,600 yards, something like Julio has put up, but more touchdowns than Julio's 7 to 8. You would think more touchdowns along the line of like 12. I would say 13 touchdowns. That's a fantastic year, and
wow.
Certainly feasible. I mean, he had 1,300 yards as a rookie in 12 games. It's not crazy. It sounds like a lot, but he should be aiming to break Josh Gordon's single-season Browns receiving yards record and lead the league just like Josh did that 1 year. So I think it's all on the table to do that.
I'd like to see him get 17 touchdowns just to break somebody else's record there.
Yeah.
Well,
it's possible. I mean, it's just a matter. It's a matter of them getting the ball down the field and giving him plenty of jump ball opportunities. And there's creative ways to get it to him there for sure.
That's right.
Oh man, I had one thing, but I can't remember what it was, and I'm not going to waste any time. Jake, let's just break it. Let's just get down to it. What do you think the Browns' record will be at the end of the season?
I felt pretty confident in saying 11-5. I think that's where they can be. If they come out of the first 6 games at 3-2, 11, which these first 6 are going to be challenging, I think they can certainly go. They can certainly go 11-5. It all swings on, in my opinion, how good Pittsburgh ends up being because they're sort of the wild card in all of this. But 11-5 is my comfortable number. The low end 9-7 is where they would be, and it would be a bit of a disappointment, but I could see them finishing there as sort of a bottom of the barrel sort of finish.
Do we make the AFC Championship?
Whew, that's a tough one. I mean, I think they have the skill to. I'm just going to say yes. It doesn't make me a homer. I just the writing's on the wall that they could be extremely good if this all comes together, and they're going all in this year to do it. And if they can sign, somebody like Mike Daniels, who we saw come available today, it would mean that they're as good as anybody. And I know that that's some projection, but you think Baker Mayfield's as good as you think he is, then yeah, they can go that far that quickly, and they're gonna be in the AFC title game. God, that'd be crazy.
Yeah, my prediction, I got them playing the Chiefs just because Kareem Hunt, John Dorsey, and just the NFL, you know how it goes. It's all about ratings. So that was
a good story.
Yeah. Oh man, it was a good story. It would make ratings. It would be an extremely highly watched game. So that I predicted that for a while. Jake, I did remember my question, then we'll get you out of here, man. Who has been your favorite addition to the Browns? I know everybody would say OBJ. You're somebody who does break down film, and whether it be a rookie that we drafted or somebody during the offseason through free agency or anything like that. Who has been your favorite addition for 2019 for this Browns team?
I would say Sheldon Richardson. I think that people are unaware of. I think that Larry Ogunjobi's a fine player. I think he's got a real chance to make a jump in year 3, but he has been sort of mediocre, and that's not a bad thing. Like, he's been one of the few talents they've had up front. So I think you're going to see somebody. Browns fans haven't seen a player like an interior presence that Sheldon Richardson will bring here. So I think that was a position of drastic need. They still need to improve that position, but is one of drastic need, and a good football player who can get after the quarterback. That is my, that's my favorite addition. One that I think that a lot of people are sort of sleeping on.
All right, guys, we've been with Jake Burns. He has blessed us with giving us a little bit of his time. Even in the background, you can hear him typing away, and I'm sure he's writing articles as we go. You can find Jake on Twitter at Jake_Burns18, and he also does the Browns Film Breakdown, and that's at Browns Film BDN. Jake, thank you so much for coming on the Browns Blitz. We love your work, and guys, he's just a hell of a guy to follow. So make sure to check him out, and thanks for talking Browns with us. It's an exciting time for us and everybody in Cleveland, and honestly, just the country. Everybody wants to see the Browns do good, I feel. Everybody that I've talked to, even here in Kentucky, they're just like, yeah, good for you. We're happy for you. So anyway, thanks for coming on. We'll definitely want to have you on again. Hopefully you can give us a little bit more of your time. But this has been the Browns Blitz, and we'll talk to you next week.